The enemy sniper team had been operating in the Colombian Cloud Forest mountain region for 3 weeks, killing coalition forces with impunity. 7 kills confirmed, maybe more. The SEALs whispered about them in hushed tones, professional shooters who knew the terrain, understood wind patterns, and never stayed in one position long enough to be targeted. Command said they were unstoppable. Then, Adeline Carter arrived with her rifle, studied the kill pattern for 20 minutes, and told her team leader she'd handle it. 12 minutes later, all 4 enemy snipers were dead. Adeline Carter had been a Navy SEAL sniper for 9 years when she deployed to the disputed border region between Colombia and Venezuela, a green mountainous wilderness where paramilitary groups, drug cartels, and insurgent forces claimed control, and where the normal rules of warfare dissolved into ambush, counter-ambush, and the constant threat of long-range fire from snipers who knew every ridge and valley. The region was beautiful and deadly. Rolling green mountains covered in dense cloud forest, a unique ecosystem where constant mist clung to slopes thick with vegetation. Steep ravines cut through terrain covered in moss, ferns, and trees draped with epiphytes. Remote villages built from concrete and corrugated metal clung to hillsides, their inhabitants caught between multiple armed groups. Ancient pre-Columbian stone terraces, remnants of indigenous civilizations, dotted the landscape, offering commanding views of the valleys below. It was ideal sniper country. Every ridge offered firing positions. Every valley was a potential kill zone. The thick cloud forest allowed skilled operators to move unseen between positions, the constant mist providing natural concealment. The terrain was so complex that aerial surveillance was nearly useless. Thermal imaging couldn't penetrate the forest canopy and mist, and the countless stone terraces and structures created hundreds of potential sniper hides that would take weeks to clear. Coalition forces, a mix of U.S. Special Operations, Colombian Special Forces, and allied units, had been operating in the region for 2 months, trying to disrupt cartel operations and prevent the area from becoming a safe haven for terrorist groups who'd established training camps in the remote mountains. The mission was supposed to be advisory and support, not direct combat, but the enemy sniper team had changed that calculation. 3 weeks ago, a Marine advisor had been killed by a single shot while conducting vehicle patrol. The round had come from approximately 800 meters, struck him in the gap between his body armor plates, killed him instantly. Professional work. 2 days later, another kill. A Colombian Special Forces soldier shot at 600 meters while on foot patrol. Again, perfect shot placement in a vulnerable area. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 more coalition personnel were killed by long-range precision fire. Different locations, different ranges, but always the same characteristics. Single shot, perfect placement, shooter never seen or located before disappearing into the mountains. The coalition response had been predictable: increased security, armored vehicle protocols, counter-sniper operations. But the enemy team adapted faster than the coalition could respond. They never used the same position twice. They never took shots that would expose them to immediate counterfire. They operated in an area so large, approximately 40 square kilometers of mountain terrain, that finding them was nearly impossible. The SEALs had been brought in specifically to deal with the sniper problem. SEAL Team 5, Delta Platoon, 16 operators split into 4 elements, each with different specializations. Adeline was assigned to Element 1 as their primary precision marksman, working with Lieutenant Jake Morrison, Team Leader Chief Petty Officer Ryan Torres, Spotter, and Petty Officer Marcus Webb, Security/Communications. They'd been in country for 4 days, studying the pattern of enemy sniper activity, trying to determine operating areas and predict future shooting locations. The intelligence picture was frustrating. The enemy snipers seemed to have no pattern beyond opportunistic targeting of coalition forces who exposed themselves in predictable locations. On day 5, during a morning briefing at the coalition forward operating base, tucked into a valley between 2 mountain ridges, Morrison had laid out the situation with brutal honesty. Intel thinks we're dealing with 4 shooters working as a coordinated team. Based on the kill pattern, multiple kills on the same day at locations 5 to 10 kilometers apart, They're positioned to cover different sectors and communicating to coordinate fires. We've got thermal imaging, we've got drones, we've got ground patrols. Nothing's working. These guys are professional, patient, and they know this terrain better than we do. Torres had added, local informants say the snipers are Venezuelan military deserters who've been operating in this region for years. They fought counterinsurgency in the Andes, worked as cartel security, now they're here training paramilitary fighters. If that's accurate, we're dealing with people who've been mountain warfare specialists for decades. The briefing had been interrupted by gunfire, the distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle, single shot, echoing across the valley from somewhere in the mountains to the north. Everyone had hit the ground or taken cover. 30 seconds later, word came over the radio. Colombian patrol, 1 casualty. Sniper fire from northern ridgeline, approximate range 900 meters. Shooter not located. 8 kills now. The snipers were getting bolder. That afternoon, Morrison had gathered Element 1 in their team area. Hire wants this solved. They're willing to give us operational freedom to hunt these guys however we think will work. Adeline, you're our best long-range shooter and you've operated in mountain terrain before. What do you think? Adeline had been studying topographic maps of the region, correlating them with the known sniper kill locations. She'd also been reviewing weather data, wind patterns, temperature cycles, visibility conditions at different times of day. They're not random, she'd said, pointing at the map. Look at the kill locations. They seem scattered, but they all have something in common. They're on the western slopes of these 3 mountain ridges, and they all happen between 900 and 1500 hours when the sun is in the east, putting these western slopes in partial shadow. Torres had leaned in, studying the map. So they're working from positions that give them shadow for concealment, while their targets are in brighter light. Basic sniper tactics, but smart application. More than that, Adeline had continued, these 3 ridges form a rough triangle approximately 15 kilometers on each side. If you put 1 shooter on each ridge and 1 floating between positions, you'd have overlapping fields of fire covering most of the valley and the main routes we use. They're not reacting to our movements. They're positioned where we have to eventually appear if we operate in this area. Morrison had studied the map. So instead of trying to find them after they shoot, we find their likely positions before they shoot and either avoid them or hit them preemptively. Or we bait them, Adeline had said. They're patient, but they're also getting bolder. This morning's shot was 900 meters, longer range than their previous kills. They're getting comfortable, maybe even cocky. If we give them a target they can't resist, at a location where we control the terrain, we can identify their positions and eliminate them. Webb had looked skeptical. You want to use someone as bait for snipers who haven't missed a shot in 3 weeks? I want to make them think we're exposed when we're actually the ones setting the ambush. They're used to shooting at people who don't know they're being observed. Let's see how they do when they're the ones being hunted. Morrison had considered it. You'd need perfect positioning, perfect timing, perfect execution. These guys are professionals who've survived decades of warfare. Adeline had met his eyes. So am I. The plan had come together over the next 8 hours. They'd identified a valley approximately 6 kilometers north of the base, where 3 of the previous kills had occurred, a natural choke point where coalition patrols had to pass when moving between 2 positions. The valley was surrounded by 4 ridgelines at different elevations and distances. If I was setting up sniper positions to cover this valley, Adeline had explained during planning, I'd put shooters on these 2 ridges, west and northeast. They're at optimal range, 700 to 900 meters. They have good sight lines to the valley floor, and they have covered withdrawal routes behind them. The other 2 ridges are either too close or too far for ideal engagement range. They'd refined the plan throughout the afternoon and evening. Element 1 would move into position before dawn, Adeline to a concealed location on the southern ridge overlooking the valley, with Torres as her spotter. Morrison and Webb would be positioned with communications and security 200 meters behind Adeline's position. At dawn, a Colombian patrol, volunteers who understood the risk, would move through the valley on a predictable route, appearing to be a normal patrol conducting routine operations. The patrol would be wearing body armor that made them look like legitimate targets, but they'd be moving in patterns designed to minimize actual risk. If the enemy snipers took the bait and engaged, Adeline would have approximately 2 to 4 seconds between when they fired and when they realized they were being observed. In that window, she'd need to locate them, range them, and engage before they could relocate. 4 snipers, unknown exact positions across 2 ridgelines covering 2 kilometers of terrain, Torres had summarized during final planning. You'll need to identify and engage all of them before they realize they're compromised and withdraw. If even one escapes, they'll adapt their tactics and we'll be back to square one. Adeline had checked her rifle, an Accuracy International AXMC in .338 Lapua Magnum, customized for her preferences, with a Schmidt and Bender 5 to 25 times scope that she'd zeroed herself and trusted completely. Then I won't let any of them escape. They'd moved into position at 0330 hours, hiking through darkness using night vision, moving slowly and carefully to avoid any noise that might alert enemy observation posts. The cloud forest was alive with sound, wind through trees, distant dogs barking in villages, the occasional vehicle on a far-off road, howler monkeys calling in the distance. But human movement created different sounds, and they couldn't afford to announce their presence. Adeline's chosen position was in a cluster of large boulders and thick brush on the southern ridge, approximately 850 meters from the valley floor where the Colombian patrol would move. The position offered concealment from observation, protection from return fire, and clear sight lines to both suspected enemy sniper positions on the western and northeastern ridges. She'd set up her rifle with careful precision, bipod positioned on stable ground, rear support bag adjusted for perfect level, scope eye relief checked, bolt operation verified smooth, 5 rounds loaded with more in easy reach. Torres had set up beside her with spotting scope and laser rangefinder. They'd waited as the sky gradually lightened from black to gray to the pale blue of early morning. The valley below remained in shadow while the mountain peaks caught the first sunlight. Birds began calling. The mountains woke slowly. At 0615 hours, the Colombian patrol had entered the valley, 6 soldiers moving in tactical formation, weapons ready, appearing alert but not paranoid. Perfect bait. Adeline had glassed the suspected enemy positions through her scope. The western ridge was approximately 1,100 meters away across the valley. The northeastern ridge was about 1,300 meters at a different angle. Both were within her effective range, but they were challenging shots, long distance, across valleys with variable winds, against targets who would be concealed and would only expose themselves for seconds at a time. "No movement on West Ridge," Torres had whispered, scanning with his spotting scope. "Wait. There. Thermal signature in that rocky outcrop at 1,150 meters. Too warm to be a rock, wrong shape to be an animal." "I see it," Adeline had confirmed, adjusting her scope to that location. Through the magnification, she'd identified what Torres had seen, the faint outline of a human figure concealed in rocks, only visible as slight variation in shadow and texture that human eyes trained to spot such things could detect. "Northeast Ridge. Second location," Torres had continued. 1,280 meters, that cluster of trees at the ridgeline. Another thermal signature, different position. Adeline had shifted aim, found the second location, another sniper, this one concealed in vegetation, barely visible even with magnification. "That's 2, she'd breathed, scanning for 3 and 4. They'd continued glassing the ridgelines as the Colombian patrol moved through the valley below, deliberately exposing themselves in patterns designed to draw fire. "Got 3, Torres had said. "West Ridge again, different position, 1,050 meters, that stone terrace ruin. Thermal signature in the elevated section." Adeline had found him, partially concealed in an ancient pre-Columbian stone terrace, rifle barrel barely visible extending from behind stone walls. "Still looking for 4, Torres had continued scanning. Below in the valley, the Colombian patrol had reached the center of the kill zone, the area where previous patrols had been hit. They'd paused there, making themselves obvious targets. "Contact," Torres had hissed. "West Ridge, primary position. I saw a muzzle movement. He's about to—" The crack of a rifle shot had echoed across the valley. In the Colombian patrol, one soldier had stumbled and gone down. His body armor had caught the round, but the impact had knocked him flat. Adeline had already been on target. The moment the enemy sniper had fired, his muzzle blast had created a small but visible signature, a puff of dust, a momentary flash. She'd seen his position clearly now. West Ridge, primary target, 1,150 meters, wind left to right at 8 miles per hour, elevation angle -15 degrees, Torres had called rapidly. "Send it." Adeline had already been squeezing the trigger. The rifle had recoiled smoothly against her shoulder. Through the scope, she'd watched the impact. The target had jerked and slumped, clearly hit. "Hit, West Ridge primary," Torres had confirmed. "Transitioning." A second crack from across the valley. The sniper in the stone terrace had fired at the Colombian patrol. Adeline had already been shifting to that position. Her second shot had been in the air 4 seconds after her first. The .338 Lapua Magnum round had crossed 1,050 meters in approximately 1.3 seconds, struck the stone terrace where the enemy sniper was positioned. "Hit, West Ridge secondary," Torres had confirmed. "2 down, northeast ridge position. He's relocating." Adeline had swung her rifle to the northeastern ridge. The sniper there had realized something was wrong. His 2 teammates on the western ridge had both been hit within seconds. He'd been pulling back from his position, trying to withdraw. But moving meant exposing himself. Adeline had caught him in transition, partially visible against the tree line as he low-crawled backward. "Northeast, 1,280 meters, moving target wind variable," Torres had called. Adeline had led the target slightly, accounting for his movement speed and direction. Squeezed the trigger, watched through scope as the round found its mark. "Hit, northeast position," Torres had confirmed. "That's 3. Where's 4? That was the question. Intel said 4 snipers. They'd identified 3. Where was the 4th? Adeline had been scanning, looking for any sign of the last shooter. The enemy team had been smart. They'd positioned their shooters to cover different sectors with overlapping fields of fire. 3 positions accounted for. Where would a 4th logically be? "Check South Ridge," she'd said suddenly. "If I wanted a reserve position that could cover the others, I'd—" "Contact!" Morrison's voice had cracked over the radio from their security position. "Shooter on our ridge, 400 meters east of your position. He's engaging the Colombian patrol from our side." That was tactically brilliant. The 4th sniper hadn't been positioned to cover the valley like the others. He'd been positioned to cover the most likely counter-sniper position, exactly where Adeline was. He'd been hunting the hunters. "He doesn't know we're here yet," Torres had said urgently. "He's focused on the valley." Range 420 meters, same ridge as us, elevation roughly equal. Adeline had already been moving, shifting her position and rifle to face east along their own ridge. At 420 meters she'd spotted him, concealed in brush, rifle aimed down at the valley, unaware that another sniper was 400 meters behind him on the same ridge. This shot was different. Shorter range, but along the length of the ridge rather than across valleys, meaning any error would be magnified by the shallow angle, and the target would realize he was being engaged the moment she fired. If she missed, he'd return fire immediately, and they'd be in a close-range sniper duel. 420 meters, no wind, slight downward angle, Torres had confirmed unnecessarily. At this range, Adeline didn't need a spotter, but the confirmation was part of their practiced routine. Adeline had settled the crosshairs on the target's center mass, controlled her breathing, squeezed. The rifle had fired. At 420 meters, the .338 Lapua round had arrived almost instantly. Through the scope, Adeline had seen the impact. The target had jerked violently and collapsed. "Hit," Torres had confirmed. 4 targets, 4 kills, all enemy snipers down. The entire engagement from first shot to last had taken 12 minutes. Morrison's voice had come over radio. "Element 1, confirm all threats neutralized?" "Confirmed," Adeline had responded. 4 enemy snipers eliminated. Valley is clear. There had been a pause on the radio then. "Outstanding work. Hold position for BDA. Battle damage assessment. They'd need to confirm the kills and identify the enemy snipers." Over the next hour, coalition quick reaction forces had moved to the 4 sniper positions. The battle damage assessment had confirmed what Adeline already knew. 4 enemy snipers, all dead from precision rifle fire, all killed within a 12-minute window. The identification had been interesting. 3 of the 4 were indeed Venezuelan military deserters, as intelligence had suspected, experienced mountain warfare specialists in their 30s and 40s who'd fought counterinsurgency operations in the Andes. The 4th, the one who'd been positioned to hunt counter-snipers, was a former Colombian army sniper instructor who'd apparently gone rogue and joined the cartels. Their equipment was professional grade, Austrian-made Steyr, SSG-08 precision rifles in .338 Lapua, high-end optics, quality rangefinders, professional-level field gear. These hadn't been militia fighters with old rifles. These had been trained professionals with proper equipment, and Adeline had eliminated all 4 in 12 minutes of engagement time. The SEAL team commander, a captain named Mitchell, had flown to their forward position that afternoon to personally debrief the operation. He'd studied the engagement map showing the 4 sniper positions and the 4 kill shots Adeline had made. 12 minutes from first shot to last, Mitchell had said, his tone carrying genuine respect. 4 targets at ranges from 420 to 1,280 meters across complex mountain terrain, all first-round hits. That's exceptional marksmanship under pressure. They were professionals, Adeline had replied, but they got comfortable. They'd been successful for 3 weeks and nobody had threatened them. They positioned to hunt us, but they didn't expect someone to be hunting them at the same time. The whisper around the base is that these snipers were unstoppable, Mitchell had continued. The Marines were calling them ghosts. The Colombians thought they were cursed. Everyone was afraid to operate in this valley. They were stoppable, Adeline had said simply. They were just people. Skilled people, experienced people, but people. You study their pattern, predict their positions, get in place first, and then you execute when they expose themselves. Mitchell had smiled slightly. Easy as that. The concept is simple. The execution is harder. But that's why we train. Later that evening, Morrison had found Adeline cleaning her rifle in their team area. You know the other teams are going to be talking about this for a while. Did you hear about the SEAL who took out that entire sniper team in 12 minutes? Adeline had looked up from the rifle she was methodically cleaning. I'm sure they'll be talking about a lot of things. That's what people do. Doesn't bother you? The attention. What bothers me is when enemy snipers kill our people and we don't do anything effective about it. The attention part isn't why I'm here. She'd gone back to cleaning her rifle. I'm here because I'm good at this, because the training works, and because someone needs to hunt the hunters. Torres had joined them. Just got word from higher. They want us to expand operations into the eastern mountains. Apparently there's another area where cartel forces are operating from concealed positions. Now that we've proven we can operate effectively in this terrain, they want us to repeat the success. They want Adeline to repeat the success, Morrison had corrected. Let's be honest about who did the work today. It was teamwork, Adeline had said firmly. Torres spotted 3 of the 4 positions. You and Webb provided security and communications. The Colombian patrol took the risk of being bait. I just pulled the trigger. That's the easy part. Pulling the trigger on 4 moving or concealed targets at ranges over 1,000 meters is the easy part, Webb had asked skeptically. Easier than spotting them, Adeline had replied. Easier than getting into position without being detected. Easier than making the tactical decisions about when and how to engage. I have the simple job. I just aim and shoot. The hard work is everything that happens before I pull the trigger. Morrison had shaken his head. I've worked with a lot of snipers over the years. Most of them are good at shooting. The exceptional ones are good at everything else too. The fieldcraft, the tactics, the patience. You understand something a lot of shooters don't. Sniping isn't about the shot. It's about the entire process that makes the shot possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Element 1 had conducted 3 more operations in the eastern mountains, targeting cartel fighting positions that had been harassing coalition forces. None of the subsequent operations had been as dramatic as the 12-minute elimination of the sniper team. but all had been successful. Adeline had made 7 more confirmed kills at ranges from 650 to 1,100 meters, each time eliminating threats that had been pinning down friendly forces. The pattern was always the same: study the enemy's behavior, predict their positions, get into place before they knew they were being hunted, and execute with precision when they exposed themselves. On their final day before rotating out of the region, Mitchell had gathered all 4 SEAL elements for a debriefing and assessment of the deployment. He'd spent particular time on the counter-sniper operation. Element 1's success against the enemy sniper team changed the operational dynamic in this entire region, Mitchell had said. Before that engagement, enemy forces thought they owned the high ground and could engage us with impunity. After that engagement, they realized we could reach out and touch them from distances they couldn't defend against. That psychological impact rippled through every subsequent operation. He'd looked directly at Adeline. The enemy snipers who terrorized this area for 3 weeks had been whispering about how unstoppable they were. After 12 minutes, that whisper stopped. Now the enemy whispers about something else: the American sniper who hunts from ranges they can't match and never misses. Adeline hadn't responded. She didn't need the recognition. She'd done her job, eliminated threats to coalition forces using the skills she'd spent years developing. The enemy had been professional, experienced, and well-equipped, but they'd made the fundamental mistake of believing they couldn't be beaten. 3 weeks later, back in the United States at SEAL Team 5 headquarters in Coronado, California, Adeline had been called to the Command Master Chief's office. He'd had a folder open on his desk, her performance evaluations from the deployment. "I've reviewed your performance in Colombia," he'd said without preamble. 4 enemy snipers eliminated in 12 minutes, 7 subsequent confirmed kills, 0 friendly casualties during operations you supported, multiple commendations from coalition partners. Captain Mitchell says you're the most effective precision marksman he's worked with in 20 years. "I was doing my job, Master Chief?" "Exceptionally well." He'd closed the folder. "We're developing a new curriculum for advanced sniper training, specifically focused on mountain and complex terrain operations. We'd like you to be an instructor. You'd still deploy when needed, but you'd spend time between deployments training the next generation of SEAL snipers." Adeline had considered it. Teaching meant sharing everything she'd learned over 9 years as an operator. It meant ensuring other SEALs had the skills to survive and succeed in environments like the Colombian cloud forests. "I'll do it," she'd said. "Good. Start date is in 6 weeks. He'd opened another folder. "One more thing. There's been a request from Joint Special Operations Command. They want to know if you'd be interested in a specialized assignment, multi-year, highly classified, working with a small team targeting high-value individuals in denied areas. Based on your demonstrated skills, they think you'd be a good fit." "What's the assignment?" "I can't tell you unless you express interest and get read into the program. What I can tell you is it would be the most challenging work you've done, with the highest value targets, in the most difficult environments." Adeline had thought about the Colombian mountains, about the 4 enemy snipers who'd thought they were unstoppable until they encountered someone better trained, better prepared, and more patient than they were, about the satisfaction of eliminating threats before they could kill more coalition forces. "I'm interested," she'd said. 3 months later, after completing the advanced security clearances and specialized training, Adeline had joined the classified program. She couldn't tell anyone, including most of her SEAL teammates, exactly what she was doing. But over the next 4 years, she'd conduct operations in 17 countries, eliminate 47 high-value targets at ranges from 400 to 1,800 meters, and earn a reputation within the special operations community as someone who could solve problems that couldn't be solved any other way. But she'd always remember the Colombian cloud forests and the 12 minutes that had defined her career, the engagement where 4 professional enemy snipers who'd been terrorizing coalition forces for weeks had learned a fundamental truth. No matter how good you are, there's always someone better. And if you operate long enough without being challenged, you get comfortable. And comfort is what gets you killed. The enemy snipers had been good. Adeline had been better. Not because she was naturally more talented, but because she'd trained longer, prepared better, and understood something they hadn't. Sniping isn't about having the best equipment or the most experience. It's about outthinking your opponent, getting into position before they know you're there, and executing with precision when the moment presents itself. The SEALs had whispered that the enemy team was unstoppable. Adeline had proven that nothing is unstoppable if you're willing to do the work necessary to stop it. 12 minutes, 4 targets, perfect execution. That was the job. That was the standard. Anything less wasn't acceptable. Years later, when she taught advanced sniper courses to SEAL candidates, she'd always tell them about the Colombian operation. Not to brag about her success, but to teach a lesson about mindset. The enemy had 3 weeks of success, she'd tell the students. They'd killed 7 coalition personnel without being seriously threatened. They were confident, comfortable, maybe even arrogant. That's what created the opportunity. They stopped being afraid we might hunt them, and that made them vulnerable. The moment you get comfortable as a sniper is the moment you're most vulnerable. Because somewhere, someone is watching your pattern, learning your behavior, and planning how to eliminate you. The question isn't whether someone is hunting you. The question is whether you're ready when they make their move. Those 4 snipers in Colombia were professional, experienced, well-equipped, but they made one mistake. They got comfortable, and comfort is fatal in this line of work. She'd pause, looking at the young faces staring at her, most of them in their 20s, eager and hungry to prove themselves. When I'm deployed, I never get comfortable. Every position might be observed, every shot might expose me, every pattern might be noticed. I assume someone is always hunting me, and I plan accordingly. That mindset is what kept me alive for 9 years of deployments. That mindset is what allowed me to eliminate 4 enemy snipers in 12 minutes while they were still figuring out what was happening. Remember that. The enemy isn't unstoppable. They're just people. And people make mistakes. Your job is to be the one who capitalizes on their mistakes before they capitalize on yours. The lesson was always the same. Training beats talent. Preparation beats experience. Mindset beats everything. They'd whispered the enemy was unstoppable. She'd proven otherwise. 12 minutes, 4 targets, perfect execution. That was the standard. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.